Hello there. Quarterfinals, and it's Anish Giri against Magnus Carlsen. We already looked at the game that they played in the preliminaries, and that game ended in a draw. And the first three games in this day one match also ended in a draw. So we're only going to look at the last game. And in that game, Anish Giri had the white pieces and Magnus Carlsen had the black pieces. Now, the first three games, Anish Giri probably played better, and especially in the first game, he had the black pieces and he had a golden opportunity to win, but just chickened out and traded the queens off and missed his chance. But he has the white pieces here in the fourth game of day one. And well, if we get a decisive result, then the one who wins will take day one. If not, game one will be drawn. But let's see. Anish with white, e4 and e5 by Magnus. If it's a serious game, a serious match, most often you will see Magnus go for e4, e5. He's defended that in World Championship matches, especially against Karjakin. But he can also go for the Sicilian like he did against Caruana. But I think he prefers this in an important game. Italian, once again. We're seeing so many games in the Italian. c3, h6, normal stuff, which we're going to browse over pretty quickly. a5, a6 or a5 is usually a choice here, and at some stage we have bishop e6. Now the rook is on f8, so taking on e6 is probably good for black because now he has the open f-file. So in this game, Giri decided to keep the bishop, play bishop e5. Knight e7 now. Most often this knight transfers over here to try to make things happen. But having transferred the knight, you give white the opportunity to break in the center with d4, which is what Anish does, d4. Bishop retreats now. And, well, this does seem to leave a pawn hanging on e5. Anish takes it. And now we have knight g4. Hitting this guy. We have a bishop on f2. Anish Giri blocks bishop e3. And Magnus surprisingly takes with the knight. And what's going on now? Well, now the pawn is lost. Anish gets a pawn. So the world champion has sacrificed a pawn, and for it he has the bishop pair. He now offers a trade and takes on a set of double pawns as well. So down a pawn and double pawns. But he does have the bishop pair. He can even allow the queen trade, and it actually looks like he has excellent compensation. He's threatening to come into d2. And white needs to do something about that. Anish opted for rook e2. But Magnus then took on e3. And it looks like Giri did not fancy taking with the rook. He took with the pawn. If he takes with the rook, it actually looks like we would have gotten a quick draw after rook d2. White needs to counter on the second rank. Black will double, and then after a move like king f1, the game would probably end like this: rook e2, rook d1 check, etc. with a perpetual. But it seems like Anish wanted more, and he took on the double pawn. So he's still up his pawn, but I don't think anybody would consider this being up a pawn. So it should be around equal, and in fact, it might even be black who's playing for something here. Let's see a few more moves. Bishop c4. Black has the rooks on open files. Now he has the better bishop. And he is about to have the better king. Look at this beautiful square coming up for the black king on e5. Rook into d3. Pressure on the white position. Anish defends. Rook e1. King to d6. Offers the trade, but Magnus says no. We're not trading yet. My bishop is still doing a good job. Rook c to c1. King e5, rook c d1, and we have the trade on d3. and the king comes to f2. Rook d6 now. Magnus is still down a pawn. But of course he's going to win one pawn back, and once he's done that, his pawn structure is indeed slightly better. But is that enough to win? Let's see. Bishop d1. Bishop c4 still doesn't take the pawn. b3 now by Giri, but now the rook comes in. The pawn was hanging, so we had to do something about this. And now the rook comes in, rook d2. King g3 and the bishop back to e6. What to do now? Can we hold on to the pawn? The queenside pawns are quite weak. If we play a4, I think the pawns are just too ripe, and we're going to play rook here and pick up some pawns. And notice that there's no rush to take the pawn on e4. Rook f1, rook takes a2, bishop g4, offering the trade, but sorry my friend, I'm taking on b3. So Giri is trying to get some activity. He plays rook f8, but now all of a sudden he's down a pawn. He's down 2 pawns actually now, and this is a big pawn coming down the board. Anish Giri has been completely and utterly outplayed here. Tries to get some counterplay, but bishop d5 protects the pawn, attacks this, and after the trade the a pawn is just too strong. Magnus now defends the base, b7, and he's ready to push. Not much that can be done. Rook back to b6, covering this, just adding insult to injury really. c4, king d4, and now we push the pawn. c5, rook a6, and king takes c5. Now we have the rook behind the passed pawn. Now we can push it, and yeah, before we bring the king, just block the white king from doing anything. Seems like at this point Magnus is toying a bit with his opponent. King f3, and the king comes in, and yeah, it's fairly easy. At this point, and now finally Giri handed in a towel, and day one belongs to Magnus. Perhaps not the most convincing, given the way that the first game went. We didn't look at that, but trust me, it was Giri should have won that. It was a big plus in the computer. Relatively simple, but Giri overlooked it and went for the safe way, and it came to bite him here in the fourth game. Magnus displaying his awesome technique, and well, Giri should have gone for rook takes e3 in this game, I think, and we would have a tight match, but as it is, Magnus takes day one, heading into day two. Giri knows what he has to do, but can he do it? We'll see tomorrow. Thank you guys. Bye bye.